exhibition over 3 days at the Mount Errigal Hotel in Letterkenny. And, one of the stands is going to be of interest if you're affected by mica. And the thing is that if you're doing any showing, I'm sure at this stage that you're all too aware about mica and the problems that it's causing, and also what to do about it. Well, maybe not so much so. Awareness just mightn't be the same beyond any showing. And to try to put that wrong to right, if you like, there's going to be a stand at the show over the weekend by the Mica Action Group. If you want to pop in, have a chat with them, get any information, find out what the situation is. And Lisa Hone was announced as the new chairperson of the group just last week. 18 months ago, herself and her husband Jerry realised that their home had mica, and she started working with the committee in their fight for 100% redress. And Lisa, who's a native of Manchester, has lived in Donegal for more than 20 years and actually is here in the studio with us. Lisa, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks very much.
So tell us what the situation is at the moment in the battle for 100% redress. What's the current scheme and where does it fall short?
Okay, just one thing first of all. It's actually it was the chairperson last year, so that was September. So just for confusing anybody
at the top
there.
Here. This is 2022, right?
There you go. Yeah,
I'm just a year out.
okay. So yeah, just to clarify, that was in September. So the current state of play is that we are awaiting the revised defective block scheme. Currently, there are draft regulations that have been circulated to what the government calls stakeholders. That would be councils, homeowner rights groups, among others. And they have to be formulated and they have to be put in place. And unfortunately, I can't give people a timeline on that. Hopefully, that should be in the near future. And then once those are in place, and then the local authorities will then take those and actually translate that into the new defective block scheme. Also, we saw rates published from the SCSI last week. Now, they are guideline to the minister. He's ultimately the person who sets the rate. So the way that the new scheme is going to work, it's on a rate per square foot per square metre. So the SCSI go out, they get the figures in that their quantity surveyors are seeing in the field, they compile those, and then they've worked it. It's a bit of a blunt instrument. That's sort of 8 house types, and they give what they believe is the square metre rate for each of those house types. But those are actually based on terms of reference which go back to 2007. So it's complicated. It's we would have our own views on that. We think that the terms of reference are really quite cynical in the way they've been devised, and unfortunately that is one of the issues that homeowners are still going to have to contend with. But that's where we are. So effectively, the scheme that's in place is the original scheme that was put in place in 2020. That's the original scheme that still is in place, and we are awaiting this transition into the revised defective block scheme. But at the moment, we're not at that point because there is still actions to be undertaken, regulations to be finalised, operational means to be adopted by the local authorities to actually make that come live. So that's where we are at the minute.
So will the revised scheme give 100% redress?
Well, the government say it will give 100% redress, but the reality is it can't. It cannot give 100% redress because of the way the terms of reference from the Housing Department are formulated. And the other thing that is a massive issue with given these times of sort of hyperinflation that we've seen in construction in the last while, effectively
costs keep going up.
You've got now there is some acknowledgement of that in the SCSI rates. They have been revised. However, you're still got this kind of manipulation of the terms of reference from the housing department, where they're, pushing it back to 2007 regulations, no matter when your house was built, no matter, your house could be absolutely bang up to date with super, energy efficiency measures, but that's not recognised. It is not a true like for like, and it doesn't even include foundations if you've got to, and that's a whole other issue that is currently under review. There's scientific investigations and reviews going on with regard to that. It doesn't even include stuff like floor coverings. I mean, for goodness sake, who doesn't have floor coverings on their floor?
Mm-hmm.
We're not walking around on bare concrete. So, there's a rather cynical terms of reference that dictate those square foot rates that the SCSI have to work to. So they're kind of working with one arm behind their back, effectively. And then the other one, which is absolutely fundamental at the minute, is the cap rate. So there is an overall cap of 420,000 put onto the scheme. That's written into the legislation that was passed in July 2022. So effectively, it doesn't matter. Like if you get up to that, there is no more beyond that right now, and we would. This has to be reviewed. It has to be reviewed because it does not recognise the hyperinflation that has gone on. There's no change there in terms of that recognition. And also, we would argue that just scrap the cap. You cannot say that it's 100% redress with a cap in place. With a cap, you are ultimately going to have people who breach that cap. Therefore, mathematically, it cannot be 100% regress. So if you're going to give homeowners a real, true 100% redress, scrap the cap.
There's many people who would say that cap is generous enough and that people should be happy with it. But the reality is, regardless of whether you build your house for 200 grand or 500 grand, if there's mica, you should be entitled to get your money back because there's defective blocks.
Exactly. No,
and also the vast majority of the homes that we're chatting about here are just ordinary family homes. They're not big properties.
They're absolutely the normal. They are the cross section of a normal spread of homes you would find in any town or any rural area. A good mix of both right across the country. We've looked at the figures. Like the homes here are no different in their profile to many different counties, especially if you just take a sort of, we're a mixed county in terms of, predominantly rural, but then we do have urban centres as well. So if you look at a similar county that is, that kind of makeup, you will find a very, very similar profile. We're just about average in terms of, and these homes were bought and paid for already. This is not somebody asking something for nothing. We're asking for the restoration of homes that we bought in good faith, the materials were bought in good faith for, on the assumption that we had a good regulatory regime, an effective regulatory regime that would ensure that consumers were protected. And, this
you would
is
assume that, yeah.
It's not a blip. It's not a blip. It's not like there was a bad batch. This was a systematic and persistent situation that went on for years.
It is
and
through
years
no fault
and
of
years.
the homeowners.
Absolutely not. And there has to be recognition of that, and there has to be a full, true 100% restoration of the homes that people bought in the first place. They have lost their whole home. That their whole home has been stolen from them, effectively.
In the last week alone, the results of a survey came out that showed that the average price of a home and an average size home here in Donegal and in Mayo went up 50,000 in the last 12 months. So with costs like that, the overall cost of the scheme is going to go up. It's estimated now that what was 3.5 billion, it could likely be 4 billion. But regardless, 100% redress is 100% redress.
But to be fair, that's not an issue that the homeowners
should worry about.
One could look back and say that if the government had owned this situation when it should have done years ago, when this has been rumbling on for years now, one could argue that we should be coming to the end and resolution of this issue at this stage. as opposed to just starting to deal with it. And part of the reason that this is going to cost more than it really should have done is because of the delay.
It wasn't started earlier.
Absolutely. And the powers that be not recognising, not listening to the homeowners, not listening to the campaign groups, and pushing it back and resisting. And I mean, the original scheme was put in place in 2020. We're coming up to 3 years on since the original scheme was put into place, the original scheme which was fatally flawed. So we've lost 3 years in literally trying to move from one scheme to, what should be a better scheme, but the acid test is when that scheme is going to land.
Okay, and all the while, there's people all the time realising that their home's affected by mica. There's people who are living in homes where the situation is getting increasingly worse. So they want some resolution. And you're here really ostensibly, Lisa, today to invite people who are affected by mica or might be affected by mica, who might want more details or chat to somebody face to face, to come along to the stand over the weekend and have a chat with yourself or anybody that might be there.
Yeah, that's it. And what I would say as well, John, it's really about defective concrete, because the latest science is indicating that a major issue is iron sulfides and internal sulfide attack. And until we get the final conclusions of the science, we're not going to have complete clarity on that. But there is enough evidence currently to point strongly that is a major issue that we're dealing with and could be the fundamental issue. Now, the mica that is in homeowners' blocks is way beyond what it should be. But iron sulfides are absolutely fundamental.
So we're chatting about
this
defective concrete as opposed to just blocks.
Yeah, so when people, I suppose, like, because of the origins and the way that things be, and, obviously we're Mica Action Group, but, that's historically where it was believed at the issue to be. But the current science is really demonstrating that the defective concrete, the iron sulfides, which are a very well acknowledged and understood issue within concrete, and how concrete should be treated, and effectively even a very small amount of these deleterious materials in the concrete can cause major issues. So I think that's the other thing that people need to realize, that there is a very, we're looking at this in a new perspective, and we really have to get to the root cause of what we're dealing with, because it's only when we get to the root cause of what we're dealing with we can ensure that the rebuild and remediation is appropriate to that, because we have to get people out of this situation and they never have to go back there again.
Absolutely. There's a lot to it. As you
is.
said yourself earlier, it's very complicated. And as a result, there's some people, even if they are affected by mica or think they are, they're reluctant to engage. But it's important that the group is supported and that you get as much information as you possibly can. And I suppose you'll say to people, please reach out. Don't be afraid to ask questions, engage on social media, or come along to the stand over the weekend.
Absolutely. So we're at the New Build and Rebuild show in the Mount Errigal Hotel. That's on for the next 3 days. It's on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, starting tomorrow. I think 12:30 is the opening time. And we have a stand there. We'll be manned by committee members and volunteers for MAG. Please come along. If you've got any queries whatsoever, please come along. We don't have all the answers to everything, but we'll absolutely do our best to give you as much information as possible. And certainly for those people who may, suspect that they have an issue with defective concrete in their home, and, really to reach out beyond those areas that are, like, as you mentioned, Inishowen is a heavily impacted area. A lot of people there would be quite au fait. Letterkenny has over the last couple of years certainly become much more acknowledging the situation. I think still probably other areas in the county, and we do know that properties are affected. They're affected all over Donegal, unfortunately. It's absolutely devastating. And, I really wish that wasn't the case. But I think that if you do suspect, or you're sort of in the sort of embryonic stages of trying to sort of figure out where you're at with this, is absolutely do come along and talk to us. We're there for the next 3 days. I'm going to be trying to give an update each day at 1 o'clock. We've got a little kind of presentation room as well as the stand this year.
Okay.
So we're going to use that each day at 1 o'clock. I'm going to do a little update in terms of what we know so far. I'm not going to have all the answers on everything, but I will absolutely give everybody as much information as I have, or my best guess on some things. And then the other thing that's really valuable is we've got a quantity surveyor, Claire Irwin, who is an absolute mine of information, and she has a specialism in energy efficiency and is very au fait with the SEIAI schemes. That's the authority that sort of administers all the sort of energy efficiency retrofit type schemes. So she's going to be coming along, and she's going to do a talk on Saturday and Sunday at 2 o'clock. If people want to tap into that, and she'll be there, and so she'll just give an overview, and then there'll be time for sort of Q&A after that. So hopefully, you can come and talk to us on a one-to-one basis, certainly, and then hopefully we'll try and give out as much information on key aspects that we know that people are desperate for. Answers, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, don't be afraid to come along. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and reach out for any information over the course of the weekend. Lisa Hone of the Micah Action Group, thank you very much. Best luck over the weekend.
Thanks very much.
Around the